footsteps trailed through the mountain range's wilderness. Trudging through a foot-high layer of snow, the woman kept on. She had no other choice. Her pale skin felt frozen. Her fingertips were completely numb. And it wouldn't surprise her if the tips of her ginger hair were growing icicles. It didn't scare her, though. This was normal for the unfortunate girl. That year's winter had been harsh for the Tundra tribe. Isolated from the rest of the world and with no native mana users in their population, the village had to gather firewood from a spruce forest south of their settlement. Her sled, bearing little emergency supplies and a week's worth of firewood, kept getting stuck on rocks hidden underneath the snow. The woman grunted and yelled out in frustration as she tugged her rope helplessly. The noon sun was her only company on her journey. The warmth it provided was negligible and, ultimately, only temporary. Andrania wished her father would get off his sorry backside and help her for once. It was always her getting well water. It was always her cooking dinner. It was always her getting the firewood. She sighed loudly, a frosty exhale visible to her naked eye. The woman was 30, even as her mind repeated over and over a childish hatred for her duty. She knew this was her responsibility. She wasn't a pampered child anymore. Father was getting older and was no longer the brave and fearless man she once looked up to and aspired to be. He appeared sharp, but the little that was left of his morale was easy to break. It was as if he was an icicle, pointy to a dangerous degree, but brittle. The old man's peg leg didn't help either. A snow dove perched atop one of the lone spruce trees in the path back to her home. A rickety golden bell was strung up by a worn rope underneath the dying tree's single branch. Andrania's sunken, dead eyes met the bird's pink eyes. They were both shivering and out of their element, far away from home. She thought it was odd for a bird like it to be all the way out there. They didn't get animals there very often, and the ones that they did were frequently foolish animals migrating from the grassy fields far off in the distance. Tugging her sled along, she wondered if the bird was lost, or if it had come here for a reason. Perhaps it had nowhere else to go and was trying to find a mate. Andrania pessimistically thought to herself, "Ha, good luck finding anyone up here willing to comfort you, little birdie." She sighed and started pushing forward again. There was little time to project feelings of dejection onto an animal that didn't care if it was eating berries or corpses. If she got lucky and the sled cooperated with her, the woman still had an hour left before she was embraced by the village fire pit again. Of course, she'd likely be the one starting the fire. Nobody knew she was out here besides her father. And if they did, they would not leave the comfort of their well-heated homes to help her out. Andrania's family used to be a part of the community. She remembered a time where the other children would rattle their creaky front door early in the morning so she could come out and play with them until the sun set. They sang and danced around the campfire in the center of town, stuffed dolls made by their mothers acting as an imaginary portal into a world outside of the snowy mountains they were trapped in. After her mother was swept up by one of nature's many flash blizzards and her despair-stricken father cursed the village for refusing to search for the remains, everyone kept their distance. The 10-year-old Andrania didn't fully understand the gravity of it at the time, idealistically thinking the drama would only last a brief period of time before her father apologized. Andrania's assumptions were false. Every single interaction between her father and the others only soured. They were deemed to be outcasts. If either of them vanished, nobody would miss them. Andrania longed for that feeling of belonging again. Even if it was for one day, she simply wanted to feel as if she could thrive. Have some good friends, some nice laughs, and perhaps find a man that would suit her fancy. The woman's breath was kicked out of her shaking lungs as her sled refused to budge. Turning around and giving it an annoyed look, she tugged again. It refused to move. Grumbling profanity to herself, the exhausted tribeswoman dropped the rope in the thick layer of snow. Rubbing her hands together to generate temporary warmth and feeling within her numb fingers, Andrania began to dig. It was going to be a branch, or a particularly shaped rock that the sled just so happened to run into on the way back. She dug for several minutes. The layer of snow was trying its hardest to hide the truth from the disgruntled woman. Yet, she had nothing left to lose. She kept digging and digging and digging. She tossed out sticks, small rocks, even a few clumps of mud. It surprised her that the sled's leg had gotten lodged so far down, but it wouldn't be the first time it happened. With a grunt, she hauled a massive clump of hardened snow behind her and stared at what the sled had gotten stuck on. Covered in dirt and decades-old snow, Andrania's mother's frozen-over face was bathed in sunlight for the first time in a long, long time. The warmth of the stone room's campfire heated up Ark's skinny body. As the crackling and colorful fire threatened to escape the stone pit with its tossing embers, the woman stared into it. Her unblinking eyes watched it fully, and her attention was fully captured. Her sole possession, a battered flail, sat to her side. Stains of several different origins covered her face, her weapon, and her dress. Ark's unkempt, ginger hair blew in the dungeon's magical breeze. She simply wasn't feeling it today. Magnifico's dungeons were crafted to be elaborate and keep her finding new things, sure. But this one barely had any cool things for her to find, nor did it have any new monsters for her to battle. It was all the same old green slimes that her Cyclops hat caretaker seemed oh so fond of. Sure, the mossy slimes were fun to smash and tasted nice in her mouth, but... Ark didn't know the word to describe how she felt. That was fine, though. Ark was sure Magnifico was working on something big for her, no doubts in her heart. Or, well, wherever her doubts were stored. She wasn't too sure of where exactly that would be, but she figured she could always ask Magnifico whenever they saw one another next. Her ears twitched instinctively. The blurry fire in front of her seemed to rise higher as footsteps echoed down the hallway from which she had come earlier. That was strange. Magnifico had promised her that he would never force her to battle one of his creations near the campfire. Perhaps he had changed his mind. That was fine, though. Anything to spice up the dungeon would make her happy enough. The heavy steps grew louder. Ark tilted her head and stretched out her neck, attempting to see if she could get a better look at the approaching monster without standing up. To her shock, it wasn't a monster that rounded the corner and entered into the fire's light. Around the corner came a man she had never seen before. Compared to her skinny size, his was far wider and far higher. His dark green attire blended in with the shadow of the camp's entrance. An impenetrable darkness created by his brow ridge covered his eyes. His laser-focused vision met her blurry vision. His jaw slacked. Ark was in shock, too, but for a far different reason. It all made sense. This was it. This was why Magnifico hadn't been as attentive to her. She rose as fast as she could manage, her stitched-together feet causing her to wobble. "Hello," Ark cried out cheerfully. "Who are you?"